Hi, Dennis. Today, I'd love for us to spend a little time talking about the importance of modernizing your forecasting, budgeting, and planning within every organization.
Modernizing your planning, budgeting, and forecasting processes is so important so that you can make those real-time decisions and you're not relying on offline spreadsheets to do that analysis before you can make that decision. With planning and Power BI, you can do that all within one integrated system within Power BI and Microsoft Fabric.
You know, those folks out there love to hold on to their Excel. Can you tell us why that's an outdated tool when you think about modernizing?
Excel certainly has its capabilities, and everybody still uses Excel in some sort of process within their organization. But what that does, it really creates its own siloed data system. So you're entering your data, you're storing your data, you're doing your analysis in Excel, but it's not making its way to other parts of the organization that can use that data as well.
And how does this integrate with the company's broader data strategy and decision-making processes?
That's a great question, and especially with Microsoft Fabric, all of your data processes, including your planning processes, can happen directly within Microsoft Fabric and Power BI. So when you're talking about your organization's data strategy, you're not just talking about data from your ERP system, your CRM, your inventory management system. We're also talking about all of the planning, forecasting, budgeting data that you have as well. And so we need to plan for that within your data strategy and create those integrations so Microsoft Fabric and Power BI become your one-stop shop for all of your data.
What if I'm not yet on Microsoft Fabric? Can I still modernize?
This planning process really happens within the Power BI ecosystem. You can actually choose what data source you want to write that data back into. So think of planning as the process within your organization and the write back as the capability to take that data from Power BI that you've modified and write that back to any data source. So data sources like Microsoft Fabric, anything like Azure Data Lake, Azure SQL, they're even using on-premise SQL for those organizations that are not cloud first.
What does write back mean from a functionality perspective versus just technology?
When we talk about write back, we are talking about the ability to input data, change data, add new records to your data directly within the Power BI interface and have that update any type of data source that you have inside of your organization.
What about the role of predictive planning in modernizing either your financial planning and analysis or the broader planning across your organization?
Every single organization that we talk to want to integrate AI and machine learning in every portion of the business. And I think there really is great possibilities to put that within your planning processes as well. So it's not just your predictive modeling, it's the ability to implement large language models, to ask questions about your data, have it pull insights for you that traditionally would have been a very manual process.
What sort of questions could you ask it?
Something like, go pull the current balance of this GL account. I could go into my ERP system, or if I have my integration set up properly, I can just ask that directly to the GPT. It'll go analyze your data set and it can aggregate those metrics for us. Think if you're just chatting back and forth with ChatGPT, it'll come back with just natural language answers, but you can also have it with new Microsoft Fabric updates, have it output as charts and graphs and matrices, and you can do that all within Microsoft Fabric now.
What is this concept of extended planning and analysis, and how does it benefit the organizations?
Everybody thinks the planning, budgeting, and forecasting processes generally sit within the financial department. And that's strictly just not the case. Every department within an organization plans to some level. And so when we talk about XP&A, We're talking about extended planning and analysis. So that's extending it to other departments, taking in your sales data, taking in your operational data, but also marrying that up with your financial data so you do have full visibility across your entire organization, and you can do that integrated planning directly within Microsoft Fabric and Power BI.
Tell me a little bit more about what are some first steps or suggested initial steps that you would tell a broader organization to think about when trying to enter into this extended planning and analysis?
Start small. Go choose one of those manual processes. Maybe it's done in Excel, maybe it's done in your legacy planning solution, and begin trying to automate that inside of Power BI. So you'll set up that data infrastructure, you set up your planning screens, you set up your analysis dashboards, and start small. Get that adoption, get the return on investment, and then take that infrastructure that you just developed and apply to other processes within the organization.
When you're talking to some business stakeholders, you're saying we do have our ERP system and we get maybe some general tables or output from that system directly. Can you talk a little bit about the advantages of building something like Fabric on top of their ERP system so they could potentially aggregate additional data sources?
With every single organization, there's not just one main system that helps them operate. It's generally multiple systems. Could be the ERP system, could be the CRM, could be your inventory management, could be your financial consolidations. With the power of Microsoft Fabric is really that we can take all of that data, bring it together, model it properly so that whether you want to do planning, reporting, analytics, AI on top of that data is already existing, and you can just build on top of that and make those enhancements.
And what would you say to folks who've already invested in some sort of planning software that's not necessarily integrated with their data or something like Microsoft Fabric? What would be the benefits of making that step to something that is more integrated?
Especially nowadays, it's so important that you don't have siloed data systems. You have one integrated platform that handles all of your data processes. And so that's really what's going to enhance each department within your organization to be able to grab that data, make those insights, do the automated planning directly within Microsoft Fabric.
Let's talk a little bit about maybe the challenges that an organization faces when trying to modernize their planning and forecasting tools and environment. What would you say are some of the challenges that are frequent out there, and how could a firm like Collectiv help with those challenges?
Yeah, there's really two main challenges that we see with automated planning in Power BI. The first of which is change management. So most organizations are doing their planning inside of Excel or some legacy software that they've licensed for that. And so when we go and implement a new process, a new technology, there's always that change management that has to occur. And that is something that Collectiv helps mitigate against in our implementations, is that we work to learn your process, work with your stakeholders to develop and train up your stakeholders so they're comfortable with the solution before it even goes live. So that's really important in change management, is that they have the support and the training to be successful in the future. The second challenge is really on the data prep and the data quality side. So a lot of organizations still don't have real-time access to their data throughout their organization. And so that is something that Collectiv really focuses on, is building those integrations, bringing that data into a database, a data lake, a data warehouse, so that you can then implement these planning and reporting solutions on top of that.
Tell me a little bit about a success story that you've heard of or you've been part of as being at Collectiv.
So most organizations that we work with come to us because they have a very Excel heavy process and they want to move that into a more modern technology. And that's where we see the biggest use case for organizations. And maybe it's not within the finance department. We've also worked with HR departments for headcount planning. We've worked with operations departments and inventory planning, and done all of that project within Power BI and Microsoft Fabric.
what have been some real world benefits that you've seen from some of the implementations you've been part of?
Absolutely. We've seen upwards of 60 to 70% time savings within departments that implement these automated planning solutions. So there's no longer having to export data out of the ERP system, managing those spreadsheets within Excel, emailing that spreadsheet for approval, uploading that back into the ERP system, use your Power BI reports that connect to the ERP system. Those days are over. What we really try to do at Collectiv is build that integrated platform, not just for planning, not just for analytics, but for all of your data processes.
What trends do you see shaping up for the future in forecasting, budgeting, and planning?
It's really around AI and machine learning directly embedded within your planning processes. So from what we've seen when we implement the large language models or we implement, machine learning algorithms, we see that speeds up your planning process upwards of 50, 60, 70% in time savings. So it might get you that far. And then you just have to do a little bit of manual intervention to modify data and write that back.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the industry word of the day is just artificial intelligence, and it seems to be impacting everybody across the board. And I think it's very important that we just do a double click, Dennis, on why is it important that you have your data in order if you want to take advantage of AI and machine learning.
A lot of organizations that we work with come to us and say, hey, we want to implement AI within our organization. But it's really hard to do that if you don't have sound and quality data. So that is the biggest deterrence against implementing AI solutions at organizations, because that AI model will rely on the data that you're feeding it. So if you don't have that quality data, if you don't have that data that modeled properly within your data lake, your data warehouse, it's going to be very difficult to be successful with your AI initiatives.
Can you talk a little bit about how Collectiv is poised to help clients take their modern business planning initiatives like we just talked about with AI?
Collectiv, we help from start to finish. So from strategy to implementation to training and support. So we work with you to analyze your business processes, develop a solution that fits your organization, go and implement that with your stakeholders, and ultimately train and support your stakeholders to use the new planning solutions that we've developed.
And where can we direct any of our listeners out there or watchers out there if they're interested in taking a first step and would like to engage a partner like Collectiv?
Everybody should check out our YouTube channel and our website for the latest content and to reach directly out to Jill and I if you do have a planning solution in mind.